Everyone, to today's webinar, How to Get Hired After a Career Break. I am Megan Frazier, the Marketing and Operations Manager here at PTLU, and I'll be manning the chat today, so feel free to drop your questions in there, and we'll have time to answer them at the end. We're thrilled to have Susan Rietano Davey and Kelley Biskupiak with us today. Susan and Kelley are the co-founders of Prepare to Launch You, a company dedicated to helping women navigate work and life transitions. They bring a wealth of experience from tech, education, and executive coaching. Together, they've helped launch thousands of women back into successful careers after a break. So now let's dive in.
All right. So I'm going to share the screen. We have a brief slideshow. As Megan said, if you have questions as we go through it, feel free to raise your hand. You can ask it live. We have about 50 people signed in, but a number of them will be watching remotely. So for those of you who are here live, take advantage of it. Ask your questions live or chat, or as Megan mentioned, put them in the chat so we can answer them. But as we said today, it's all about how to get hired after a career break. And that changes, doesn't it? It changes given conditions. And right now we're in a slightly more challenging and really just more uncertain market.
Yep.
So some of these tips will help you get moving forward.
And I think it also changes and adjusts as you move through the spectrum, because returning to work and getting hired after a career break, there is a spectrum.
That's right.
To which you come that you land on when you're thinking about this return. So we'll talk you through those things
We will.
today. So a little about us, right?
So we are both moms of four. We are both career relaunchers. So unlike a lot of career coaches out there that are speaking in general terms, we really understand this marketplace. As we say, if you have heard us speak before, this is our lane. And between us, we have over 40 years of experience in this workspace.
Right. And we're recognized as experts in this area, as Susan said, in this lane. We have extensive recruiting and hiring manager experience and insights.
And that's really important.
Yeah.
Because even when we've worked with major universities and their student relations departments, their resume writing services, their networking instruction, if you haven't been in corporate America, if you haven't hired, led a team, recruited people, it's really hard for you to understand that other side of the desk, and it's really critical.
Right.
So we have that too.
Right.
Yeah.
And with all of that, we have helped clients and students all over the globe now.
Literally.
Really a lot of fun for us to get to work with so many people all over the world, consistently help them and supported them in landing great jobs after career breaks. So it can be done. I think that was one of the things when Susan and I were both doing our return, and why we started this company to begin with, is that it feels really lonely. It feels like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And you think you can get yourself started, and then all of a sudden you have this like wave of overwhelm of, who do I even talk to, and how do I make this happen? And then all those voices inside your head start telling you every reason why it's not going to work. And so we really, like Susan said earlier, we really understand this, and this can be done. We have countless stories of students who have done this, and we're going to help you here today with that.
That is right. Okay, moving on.
Yep.
So I am not seeing your slides.
Pardon me?
Can you reshare your slides? Is everybody seeing her slides?
Huh. Stop share and reshare, maybe?
Are you not seeing it, Megan?
Okay, maybe it's just me. Maybe I hid you. Continue.
Okay. All right, as long as I can see them. So our goal for today are to first identify the 4 essentials of executing a successful career relaunch, and then explain how they differ from conventional job searching, because there really is a difference.
Right. And then we're going to teach you proven strategies for conducting a successful post-career break job search. So there's some really good strategies that you're going to learn today. And then we're going to share some real life success stories of those strategies, just kind of give you that little bit of inspiration and motivation.
And Megan is actually one. Megan is a graduate of our program.
Yeah.
She was so good we hired her.
Yes.
All right. And then of course we'll have time at the end to answer your questions. All right, so here are the 4 job search essentials for any career relauncher. And as we go through them, consider this. Are you following these, or are you doing something maybe different?
Right, right. So number 1, you have to have a clear direction. And before you do anything else, you must know your brand. So that's who you are, and your audience. Who are you speaking to? So how do you get to that? Well, you develop your brand from understanding what are your strengths. What do you do really well? What do people call on you for? What are you known for? What are your strengths? Then what are your skills and your experiences that you bring to the table?
And this can include both paid and unpaid
Absolutely.
experiences.
Absolutely. And really, you're going to hear this consistently throughout this webinar, that unpaid experience matters.
Work is work, whether
Yes.
it's paid or unpaid. And
Yeah.
once you believe that, you'll be able to convey it much more confidently so that the person you're talking to will believe it too.
Right. So just having that understanding of who you are, what you bring to the table, that's your brand. And then also, what roles do you seek? Right.
Mhm.
So when it comes to doing work, what are you looking to do? What is required of those roles? So getting an understanding of what is going to be expected of me if I were to take on this role, if I
Mhm.
were to do this job. Now, the thing about that is women will think that they have to fulfill every little last piece of a role in order to be able to do that role. There is a lot of room for growth. It's having some good, solid skills that qualify you for something, but educating yourself around what are they going to be asking of me when it comes to doing
And
this
also
job.
thinking, turning the lens inward, not just what are they asking of me, but what do I want of them?
Yeah, is it a
And that's
fit?
one of the areas when we teach our full course where students really have this epiphanies, because often as a career relauncher, we're coming into it with a little less confidence perhaps than we left the workplace.
Right.
And we're not really thinking about what do I want from you? We're thinking, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
Often we find also when Kelley does her work on mindsets that many women are pleasers. So I'm thinking about how can I check every box for you without thinking about what I want?
Yeah.
And those things could consider things could include things like pay and benefits, but also, do I want flexibility?
Mhm.
Is title important to me?
Yeah.
Is creative control? Is workplace? Do I want to work remotely? Do I want to work on site? All of those things. So taking an inventory of your workplace priorities and job priorities as well.
Right. And that the key word there is prioritizing
Mm-hmm.
those things. What are your top 3 priorities when it comes to, go for a job or work that's going to be a fit for you? Because oftentimes, and Susan and I have seen this a lot, people can circle the drain here too. So you can either 1, be too much of a pleaser and take whatever comes your way, or 2, you become so rigid that it's like, unless it's perfect,
Right.
I'm not going to take the job.
Or I'm not going to even apply. And that's
Right,
a problem.
right.
You want to make sure
So
you have your hat in the ring.
There's a bit of gray area in there. Yeah, can you do this?
So the second piece is your story. So we do a lot of work. If you've watched any of our taken any of our short form courses, we talk a lot about storytelling. By virtue of having a career break, you have a unique story. You do not have a conventional resume that starts here and moves through a few similar roles and ends here. You have a break in between. Perhaps you had some part-time jobs. Perhaps there are some red herrings in there where you moved overseas or across the country for your spouse's job and you just took a job at Athleta, whatever it is. All of those things that if they are not connected will make no sense to me as a hiring manager. You get about a 6 to 8 second read on your resume from me, about the same on your LinkedIn. So if you aren't telling me right away this compelling story, I'm not going to make it up for myself. I'm going to look at 6 different things and feel like they don't connect at all. So your job is to connect those dots of the paid and unpaid experiences, and maybe those experiences that weren't typically in line with what your profession is, but you can pull out those things that made sense relative to what you want to do. And then tell me the story. Tell it to me in your resume. Tell it to me in a more narrative form in your LinkedIn, and tell it to me in an entertaining, engaging way when in front of me. So that storytelling is really important, because the most important thing to be in your job search is memorable. I'm going to interview 30 people today. I need to remember you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So the next piece is a strategic networking plan. So finding and applying to jobs online is a losing strategy.
We call it post and pray.
Yeah.
And that's really all it is. You have less than a 10% chance of getting an interview.
Right.
Forget about getting the job.
Right. And so when it comes to you as people who are having a career break, your network is everything. Your network is how you're going to get a job. It's what we teach our students in all of our courses. You are not going to be applying online and getting a job. It is so few and far between that would happen. And you have such an unconventional resume. It's probably never going to beat the algorithm. So don't waste your time there. And oftentimes we will find that that is where people spend their time because it feels productive. Oh, I applied to all of these different jobs on these job boards, on all these different job boards that are all over the internet now. And so giving yourself the opportunity to really connect with someone in a meaningful way and having them be someone who's going to give you that credibility and help you get in the door. Do you want
And
to talk more about
well,
this?
your network isn't just professional people.
Right. No.
It's the people you see on the sidelines at your
Yes.
kids' games. It's the person you see when you go to visit your parent at the retirement community. It's
this summer when you're all over the place and you're meeting people on vacation
or at a party. I
Yes.
mean, your network is quite big. So you want to expand what you consider a network
Yes.
to include people that you have any interaction with, because they themselves may not have a direct connection into a company or an organization that interests you, but they know someone who does.
Yes.
That's much more likely.
Yes.
And then the last thing of the 4 is you have to have the mindset. So very often, this is something I always say to my kids, and you do too. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So when you're interviewing with me, if you're telling me about something that's totally banal and disinteresting, I will become interested if you tell it to me in a compelling way. So if you are not talking that way to yourself, if you're not telling yourself that what I do is interesting, what I've done is interesting, this volunteer role was really impactful, I learned some great things doing this. If you are not using that positive voice in your mind, then what comes out of your mouth won't have that same amount of impact.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that
Yeah.
more?
Well, I think that, oftentimes when we are in a caregiving role and we become someone who is always thinking about everyone else but yourself, or putting yourself on the back burner in some way, you don't talk about yourself. You could talk about your kids, you could talk about your spouse, you could talk about your sister, your parents, you could talk about your community. And so there is a bit of a warm up in how you are, coming to the table and talking about yourself. And it starts with what you're saying to yourself in your mind. And so this is a challenge. We are going to tell you right now, it is a challenge to return to work after being out for some time. You can do it. It is absolutely possible. And when it gets hard and difficult and challenging, you have to just remind yourself, treat yourself the way you would treat your child or your sister or your friend.
So those same positive messages you give your kid when they're heading out to school for a big game or a test, same thing you want to say to yourself.
Yes.
The other thing is you want to be sure who you're surrounding yourself with.
Yes. Because we call them saboteurs. If you are putting people around you, and I will tell you this, we have watched this, we've witnessed this even with some people who've come through our programs. If it gets challenging and you are surrounding yourself with people who are talking about all of the negative aspects and how bad the market is and how I've tried this or I'm too old, and you're hearing those messages, you're going to believe them. And maybe that one opportunity shows up where you do get that interview. That energy can be read on the interview. If you're walking around constantly feeding yourself with the negativity of navigating this process, then it's going to come through. Yeah, it's going to come through. So really being impeccable with the way you are speaking to yourself and who you are surrounding yourself with, especially when you are going after a challenging goal like this. Yeah.
Okay. So the first one of those 4 is career direction, knowing your lane. So as Kelley mentioned, take inventory of your strengths. One thing that we do in our programs that's easily replicable for you at home is just to ask people, send a quick email out to the people that you volunteered with. Maybe 1 or 2 colleagues that you still are in touch with, or maybe even those you haven't been in touch with, but that would remember you, and ask them, what did I do best when I worked with you? When we ran that school volunteer project, what contributions did I make? What did you observe as my skills? What work would you want me to take on because it's something that I'm particularly well skilled at? Really important questions to ask, to understand from other people how you're perceived.
One that I want to add to that is, what was not my forte?
Mhm.
What was something that you wouldn't have called on me for?
That's
It's
right.
good to hear that
right.
information too, because it's helping you discern between here is a strength and here is something that I really don't want to put
Mhm.
much stock in.
Mhm.
But it's just good to know and educate yourself about how am I perceived? What do people
That's
think
right.
about me? And don't be afraid to do this. This is, like Susan said, this is something we have our students do in our course. And there's always a trepidation when that actual
Set of
lesson
busy.
comes out in the course, but they are always so excited when they get the information back. And the beauty of it is you're starting to develop language that you can then later put into your resume or your bio on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And make sure that you are bold about counting the work that you've done that wasn't paid. Really, really looking at the things that you did. The second piece is do some research. So of course you could stay online and just research jobs.
Right.
Maybe looking at the job that you last had and what does it look like 10 years later?
Mhm.
You know, certain jobs have changed dramatically
Right.
in even 5 years. So doing some research, you can look at job boards. You may live in an area where there are a couple of employers that are really reputable, maybe look at their websites. But even more importantly, most importantly, is to make sure that you get this information, get ideas, and then deeply explore it by talking to people
Right.
who either work at those organizations that interest you, or in those roles that interest you, or talk to people you used to work with, even if it was 20 years ago, to get some ideas about how has it changed?
Right.
What did we do 20 years ago that's the same?
Right.
What kind of career path have you seen? Have you seen other people leave the workforce and come back here? So we are going to provide an explore and assess template to help you with this. That's the exploring piece, doing the research and then asking other people for their candid input about the work that they do in the organization where they work.
And a big part of what this is doing when you are doing a strategy like this and putting this into action is you're growing your confidence back. With each conversation that you have, you are learning, you are growing, you are feeling more confident about the direction that you're going to be taking. So once you've gathered all of that data, right, you've done your exploring, you're going to assess it against those things that we talked about already.
Right.
So where does it fall in your priorities? Does it meet those top 3 priorities for you?
So for example, if you work in finance, and we've seen a lot of the major banks require in the office, and if you live an hour outside of your closest city, and one of your top priorities is I need a hybrid schedule, and you know that this organization only does full-time on site, they published it, the people you've talked to, that might be a place that you don't want to invest a lot of effort, right? Similarly, you might find that one of your big priorities is, let's see, creative control. And everyone you talk to in the organization says we are very hierarchical, we're really old school. You know, if you don't want that kind of an organization, you'll find that out when you start looking at their feedback against your priorities and also your skills.
Right.
We only take people who can code in Python. Well, you don't know Python. In fact, you don't know how to code, right? That's a new requirement of your field. So you either have to say, okay, I really want to do this. I'm going to go to school and learn how to code in Python. Or you're going to say, okay, I don't want to go to school to learn Python. I'm going to move on to something else. And it's that idea of turning the lens outward. How do I fit them? And then turning it inward.
Yeah.
How do they fit me? And that's all part of the assessment piece.
And likewise with the assessment piece, you're also looking at those strengths. So does this particular role or this field, does it play to your strengths? Is it something that's going to play to your strengths? So that's all a part of that assessment piece. And Megan, are you dropping that in the chat that explore?
I think I'm going to send it in an email.
It's gonna go in an email today.
Great.
Okay.
I do have a question that Michelle asked in the chat that I think is a good time to address now. She said it's such a good point, what you're talking about on your personal narrative, how it needs to be compelling. But should you revise your resume to avoid potential ageism? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, we have very strong opinions about age. If I want to know how old you are, Michelle, I can find out in a New York second. So, I mean, if that's what you're worried about, don't do it. My general rule for resumes is go back as far as you have to make the case. So for example, years ago, I had a private client who was, she was a lawyer. She was an advocate for, child advocate for the state. Really had moved up in the legal ranks and was just ready to abandon law. And she wanted to go work in banking because she just loved numbers. She had done no law in anything other than the public sector. And it wasn't until maybe our 5th meeting when we'd already done her resume, already done her LinkedIn, we'd already practiced her interviews. And I was walking out the door and she said something about working in a bank in college and while she was in law school. And I was like, oh my God. In her case, the one thing that would have best opened the door for her, she had excluded because she didn't only wanted to go back 15 years. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I will tell you from my personal perspective, having looked at gazillions of resumes, I like to see the story. I like to see where you started out because I know that our most basic foundational skills come from where we started. So absolutely, if you started in one of the major executive training programs, there were a couple in retail, there were a number in tech, and a number in finance. I don't care if it was 40 years ago, you put that on your resume because that speaks a lot, not only to the quality of your candidacy, even when you were 21, but it talks about the quality of your foundations. So those things belong there. And I think the only time I would say just keep it all off is if the first, 5 or 10 years of your experience were, I was traveling around the country and I was working as a nanny and a carpenter and a dog sitter, that doesn't belong there. But I generally think all of the foundational experience begins there, because if I don't want to go look up your age because I'm not that curious, I'm going to know that if the first job on your resume says account executive, that you didn't start there. You're an account coordinator first, maybe an account manager, maybe an associate before you got to that. So it makes me kind of curious, like, what did she leave off? Ageism exists, but you can't really escape it because they're going to find out. The bigger piece is to make sure you're qualified, make sure you are really strong on those things we just talked about on your brand, that you can pitch it well. And the bottom line is that we have 5 generations at work right now. We do workshops. We just pitched a workshop to a major tech company to teach them about the 5 generations at work. We're living into our 90s. 60 isn't old anymore. Some people think 40 is old. None of those are old. So, but it's also easy to think, well, I'm not getting any opportunities because I'm old. That's usually not the reason.
It's usually because of the networking.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually have a really great success story about, I think 27 years she was out. Waymo.
Okay, so she was out for 27 years.
Yep, she was out for 27 years, and she got a job at Waymo, which is the tech.
It's the electric company from Google.
But she had started her career at General Motors, and it was her son who she networked with to get the job. So just know and understand that your network means so much, and don't deny your chops. If you started out and you had some really great successes at the beginning of your career, like don't negate all of that and what that's going to bring to the table. We've had other success stories of students who they get hired, they take the job, and they become this, person on the team that understands the systems that are all automated now because they had the paper version of it. And when things go awry, they can explain to all of the younger people on their team, hey, wait a second. You don't have to do that because this is how this system was built.
They can understand all the inflection points. So right now, so many things are just a push a button. But specific to Verna, because she was one of the examples we're going to get to in a bit, the last technology that she had worked on was fuel injection, like in the 90s.
Right.
But they hired her to work on the most, and she's in product design. She's an engineer. They hired her to work on electric cars, the most cutting edge technology, even though she had no experience, because they respected her foundational experience.
Yes.
They knew she was a very well-trained engineer. Now, during those 27 years, she did a number of other projects. None of them were specifically engineering related. However, she worked in tax accounting for like a H&R Block. She did operations and inventory management for her brother's manufacturing company. So she had her hand in a variety of areas that also tested the key of an engineer is how well can I create an algorithm and execute on it. So they knew that, but because she took the time to really learn how to connect those dots and to tell the story, when she got in front of the hiring manager, the creative way that Kelley described, she had something good to say. She didn't apologize for not having been in an engineering role for 27 years. She highlighted the fact that this is what I was trained in. And I've used those same principles in varying ways. And it worked. She's still there. So thanks, Michelle. It's a good question. All right, let's go on. Okay. So when you think about your story time, we talked about the story comes in a resume.
Right.
It also comes in a LinkedIn. It also comes in an elevator pitch, and it also comes in an answer to the most common interview question at the beginning, some form of tell me about yourself. The first thing you need to know is that the story is the same in each permutation, just it's told differently.
Yes.
And when you're telling your story with that audience in mind, the reason you have to have that audience in mind is because you can only have one resume. You can't, and you're probably getting all kinds of advice saying you can have 10 resumes or 20.
Or we'll hear this a lot. I'm just gonna tweak my resume so it's speaking to this audience a little bit more. Or I saw this job description, I'm gonna tweak it a little bit this way. You're not doing that.
A minor tweak is okay, but what Kelley's talking about is I'm gonna go for a marketing job over here, and over here I'm gonna go for a systems analyst job.
Right.
Totally different skill sets, and you may have both. But for the purposes of your career search, you need to choose one. Now, you may go after the marketing job for 6 months or 2 months or whatever, and just say, you know what, I'm just not that interested in that anymore. And then you can start all over. And then you're going after the systems analyst. It's assuming you have two very divergent skill sets. But you can only have one resume because you can only have one LinkedIn. So you could have 20 resumes. But when I get that systems analyst resume from Kelley Biskupiak, and it's in my system, and then 3 weeks later, she's applying for a marketing job with a different resume, and it comes across my desk, I'm thinking, well, which one is she?
Mhm.
Right? So one resume, one audience. It
And
can
we've
change.
gotten that feedback where we
Mhm.
know of people who have put out in the same company for 2 separate jobs with 2 separate resumes, and they got dinged on it.
Mhm.
So, or their LinkedIn didn't match up with their resume because everybody's going to LinkedIn. Everybody's checking you out on LinkedIn probably first,
Mhm.
right? They'll see your name on your resume, and then the next thing you know, they're at your LinkedIn profile. So,
And then they're sitting in the interview with the resume in front of them, and they're realizing that they don't connect.
yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. All right. And then rule number 2 is to pitch your career break as an asset and not a liability. This is a Susanism. And a big piece of this is you owning that valuable time, those valuable contributions that you have made to your community, to the bigger support system that you are a part of. And it's doing it in a way that is professional speak, though.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to see like CEO mom or like what are
Chief
some of the-
domestic
yeah,
engineer.
like we're not doing any of that. We're really speaking to the audience with language that is professionally based.
Mhm. And if you don't address your break early in the process, I mean, we actually recommend that you start with it at the beginning of the interview, because if they don't ask you about it,
Right.
it either means they haven't figured it out yet because they didn't bother to read your resume. And as soon as you walk out the door, when they look at it, they're like, oh my gosh, she hasn't worked in 10 years. Or they have already written you off. If they do ask you the question, they're likely to ask it maybe a third or 2/3 of the way into the interview. And if you don't handle it first, then the whole time you're waiting, you're panicking about when they're going to ask you.
Right.
If you lead with it and you talk about that break as being an asset, and it really is, then you own the narrative. You're taking control of the interview, and you're getting that question out of the way so the rest of the interview can really focus on your skills, your experiences, and your behavior, which is really what they're looking for.
Right. And we're going to talk to you a little bit later in the webinar about we're actually going to script how to say that for you.
Mhm.
Yeah. How to speak about your career break.
Yeah.
Okay. And then rule number 3 is practice telling your story well. We love taking you through the whole process of, speaking it, of writing it in the resume. You're making this come to life. You're making that compelling story come to life, writing that bio out in your LinkedIn profile, and then practicing it with someone. There are AI tools on LinkedIn now where you can actually record yourself practicing your elevator pitch, and then it will give you feedback on how well that's going. Connecting with people who are like-minded, maybe somebody from even this webinar, and
Right.
connecting with them and practicing with them if you're both have this common goal. It's great to have a partner to help you along the way.
We have our own method, but a common method that's used as just a template is the STAR method. So when you're telling a story, this was a situation, these were the tasks that I was charged with, these were the achievements relative to that work, and this was the result. So making sure that you're kind of hitting those boxes just helps you create kind of a format for storytelling that can be helpful. Okay. So we just said work is work, whether it's unpaid, paid or unpaid. So you kind of highlighted this. When Kelley said, we want you talking in business terms, we don't want you saying chief domestic engineer or CEO mom. We want you to talk about your work in the language that I understand, and to recognize that those things that you've done that are perhaps unpaid are still valuable workplace currency. So for example, we've had a number of students that have children with learning disabilities. We get a lot of parents with children on the autism spectrum. In many cases, they've had to stop work longer than they'd intended because they need to homeschool their child. Well, we can use that as workplace currency because you're doing curriculum development. Many of the women who take our programs have been creating lesson plans that they're now marketing to others, even if they're not charging for them, but they're still creating a product and is selling it even without charge. Some of them have done work in their school systems to advocate for learning technologies to be adopted or purchased into the school system.
Or advocated like on the bigger
on the state,
scale.
at the state level or the community level as well, or the county level as well. So those are all transferable skills from one role as a homeschool mom, which would seem probably like the last thing you want to put on a resume.
So when we're talking about professional speak, you wouldn't put
You know,
title homeschool mom. You wouldn't put that. You would
you would put educator.
Yeah.
And then you would talk about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. This is the same thing. We see this, especially for those of you who are taking care of elderly parents. You are taking care of estates. You are taking care of moves for for these people. You are coordinating with many different caregivers for your elderly parents. So really thinking about all of the tasks that you're completing and doing that really important work and putting it into that more professional language and, calling yourself,
An advocate.
Yeah. Elder care advocate.
So another thing to remember is one of the things we talk about, particularly when it comes to networking and interviewing, is an interview is a conversation. It's not an interrogation. So when you are in an interview, whether it's a true interview or a networking call, just remember that you have an opportunity to educate the person on the other side of the desk. And part of educating them is making them recognize that that work that you did, advocating either on behalf of an elderly parent or a learning disabled child, that work that you've done in your community or at a greater level benefits many more people. And that really the communities, all of our communities, are kind of resting on the shoulders of the MBA moms who made the very difficult decision to stay home and raise their child. And just internalizing that message and believing it gives you a little bit more confidence in that interview to remind the interviewer that they have probably benefited too. So like a good way to handle it, like if you're especially getting some pushback. Well, for example, one of the things that I did, I sit on the recreation committee of our community, of my city. And, I can see from this photo on your desk that you have a child who plays soccer. So when you think about all that goes into that, I'm the one that makes sure that the fields are maintained. I sat on the committee that built the field. I'm the one that makes sure that there are officials that show up, that coaches show up, that buses shows up, that schedules are made, that the insurance is up to date. So all of those things that we forget about when we're just taking our kids to soccer on a Saturday, there's somebody doing that behind the scenes. And that's the kind of work that I did. In that moment, I'm not just delineating what I did, I'm kind of reminding them in a fairly gentle but firm way still that you benefited from my work and its work. And just putting that perspective can be really helpful.
Yeah, it's a great mindset to go into an interview with or a networking call with, that this work is very valuable work. And it's beholden onto you to educate people about who you are. Here is who I am. And that is your job when you're doing any kind of returning.
That's right. And this is what I've done. So talk about your accomplishments. Talk about them in terms of results. Now, you want to form them in the most valuable light. So again, if you ran an event that was called the, Humpty Dumpty Bash, you're not going to call it that. You're going to call it, a major donor event. So thinking of language that doesn't sound like you did it at the Humpty Dumpty event, right? That's fine if that's what it's called, but you don't want to draw, you don't want to detract.
I'm fine if that was.
I know. Yeah, that's true.
Not the best marketing.
failure.
Don't do that.
But the idea is that you want to use the language that's going to sound the most, in some cases banal, but definitely the most business-like.
Right.
All right.
Professional.
Okay. So we talked about reframing your career break, and we've highlighted a couple of examples, but specifically, as you do this inventory, think about, what do I do in my community? What do I do in my kids' schools if I have children? Or if my choice to stay home is to take care of elderly parents, what am I doing within the elder care community? What do I do in my place of worship? What do I do for athletics or arts? What do I do? What boards do I sit on? What have I started? Those kinds of things. Just start writing them down. And we are big believers in, like, we have notebooks everywhere. Just an old notebook, write it all down.
Yeah.
And don't decide what belongs or what doesn't. Just get it all down.
This is a
I'm sorry,
great,
what?
this is a great,
Oh, God, no.
oh,
Let me see.
yeah, okay.
Let me look at that. Okay, I'm sorry. I-
Is this a great,
Yeah,
this
like,
is a great screen?
500 things thrown at me and
Yeah. And somehow we've got this little red line or orange line here that appeared in the last
I
slide.
know, that's so funny. Okay, the next question to ask yourself is, what have you done as a gig worker? So oftentimes we will overlook these small little stopgap things that we've done, or maybe it was just like one afternoon you devoted to this, but it was still work that you did and that you put time into. So it could be something that you've done for a family business or a friend's business that was unpaid. I mean, I can't tell you how many friends' businesses I helped and supported before I ever went back to work, and did a number of really valuable things to help them and support them. For an old colleague or acquaintance, any short-term gig, maybe you had.
Well, we had one student who once a year, she was out for like 14 years. Once a year, she went back to her old company and ran their
Yes.
trade shows for 3 years. I mean, for 3 days. That was it. And she didn't think it belonged.
Yeah.
Because it was just, a couple of days a year,
Yeah.
but it belongs.
Yep. For a barter or pro bono arrangement, if you've ever bartered with someone for something, or said you're going to do this work pro bono, that counts, that
Mhm.
matters. And like I said before, even if it was just for one day,
Mhm.
that is work that you've done.
And then we've already mentioned taking inventory of the things that you've done as a caregiver, specifically related to any type of curriculum development, advocacy, navigating the healthcare system. If you are an executor of an estate or power of attorney for someone, a disabled or ill relative, any type of legal advocacy, those things count. Things that don't count, just to give an alternative, or the other side would be budgeting for groceries, grocery shopping.
Laundry.
Yeah, those
Although
things,
that's hard work.
they take a lot of
Hard
time,
work.
but those don't translate as easily.
Right.
They don't really belong in a resume at all. Okay, so this is what you teed up earlier,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Kelley said we provide like a little bit of a script of how you talk about a career break. And these 3 elements belong in everybody's story. I loved my work.
Yeah. Hold on.
I
Another
was-
place to take a screenshot.
Yeah.
This is the really good one to take a
I'm
screenshot.
so curious
I
what
know.
that line came.
I don't
'cause we
know.
weren't touching it.
No, I know.
I loved my work. I was really good at it, as you can see from my resume. It was a sacrifice to leave, but given my alternatives at the time, it was the right decision, and I'm glad I made it. One of the things that I used to say was, I loved my work. I was offered my dream job the day I had to resign because I'd had a child. I loved my work. I loved my team. I just loved my child more. I mean, that's a very bold way to say. You have to be pretty confident to say something like that, but find your words. But that's it. I loved it. I was great at it. It was really hard to leave. I think the mistake that we see many people make is that first of all, we understand that it is a privilege to be able to take multiple years off of work. It either means that you've done really well and saved a lot of money, or your spouse has done really well, or you're making a financial sacrifice. Regardless, it is a sacrifice. It is a privilege as well, right? That you are able to afford to do it. And too many people focus on that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she's just a rich wife and she's staying home playing tennis. And we all know that's not what it is. So making sure that someone understands how much of a sacrifice it was for you to leave is really important.
Yeah. And so then the second element is I tapped into and perfected my professional skills and expertise throughout my career, break in the community, as a caregiver, advocacy roles, and I learned new ones too. Because you may have been writing the newsletter for some
Right.
organization that you did work for, you volunteered for, and you had to learn how to navigate Canva and to put things out through MailChimp or whatever it might be. Those are important skills that you may have learned in a role. And really think about, what roles have I taken on and how can I use that right now in this particular element to spotlight and teach this person. Yeah, but look what I've been doing in this time off. Look at who I've become in that time.
Especially if you were in a role, like I like your example. So let's say 10 years ago,
Yep.
maybe 12 years ago, pre-MailChimp,
Mhm.
you were doing a newsletter,
Yep.
but you were typing it out and
Right.
doing kind of more primitive graphics and then emailing it out.
Right.
There would be the assumption that someone in marketing communications 12 years ago can't do anything now because it's totally different. It's also reminding them that I have the skill set, because the real skill here is the writing.
Mhm.
And I know how to use the tools. I've kept current.
Right.
That's so back to Michelle's question earlier. Often the ageism isn't related as much to your age as it is to the assumption that your skills are dated.
Right.
You can't control the clock. I'm the oldest person here. I can't change my age, but I can change the way I show up, how prepared I am, how current my skills are. So focus on that less than the age.
And, you know, if you are still sort of building this section of your skill set in your time away, right now is a great opportunity to take on something, like really think about, like, if I'm going to volunteer my time or I'm going to put any time out there, where am I going to do it so that it's actually going to benefit me when it comes to returning?
We just did a video on that.
Yeah, we did. We did.
So
on YouTube.
maybe, Megan, you can tee that up. So we have a YouTube channel. Every Monday we put out new content asking, they're like 10 minutes, sometimes less, and they answer a very specific career relaunch question. We did a whole section just recently on what we call strategic volunteerism. Take a look at it, because if you think you're still going to be home on break for another, few months or years or whatever, this will help you focus on doing volunteer work that will help advance your candidacy. And then the third piece of it is, I love my work, great at it, sacrifice, glad I made it. This is all I did, all I accomplished, all I developed and learned during my break. And then the third piece is, and now I'm ready. And I am eager to bring both my foundational training in the workplace and these other experiences that I've had during this 10-year career pause back into the workplace, right? That's the final piece. So as Kelley said, take a screenshot of that, because it's something that you'll want to use on a regular basis as a career launcher. Okay.
So we talked a little bit about this
Yeah.
earlier, but it's that there's a distinct difference between strategic networking, which is what you're going to do.
Mhm.
And it's a part of the strategy that we teach and it works, versus that post and pray. Like, I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to feel like I was really productive today, applying to a number of different positions, and then hearing nothing. And over time, that really starts to feed your motivation, your, ability. You just start to feel bad.
Mhm.
So networking is where you're going to spend your time. So why don't you give a little bit?
Well, we talked earlier, I think
Yeah.
you read the other slide where it's like, less than 10% chance of even getting an interview by doing this way. So why would you spend your time doing it? But the other piece to remember is this: when a job is posted, there are one of four reasons it's posted. Only one of them is, I have a job that I need to fill right now. The second one would be, I have a job that I may need to fill if we land this account or if we get this infusion of cash, if it's a smaller company. So I'm going to put a posting out there so that when and if we get this money, we have candidates, right? So that's just pie in the sky, and it's a total waste of your time. The third is, I'm going to post this job because we have our quarterly earnings report coming out, and we have a board meeting. And this usually will happen at the end of a quarter, a half, or the end of the year. And what better way to look like your company's doing well than have a lot of open job postings? So very commonly, I can tell you, even years ago when I was in tech, pre-job boards, we still put job postings out there just to kind of see what was out there with no intention of filling a job. And then the fourth would be, there will be an opening, but it's going to require that this person leaves, and this person, we're going to fire this person and move that. or I need to fill an EEO requirement to make sure that it looks like I'm being fair. So I'm going to just post it up there, but I'm really going to fill it with this guy's nephew.
We had a
So-
student who came back to everyone and said,
Yes.
you
It
know
really
what?
happens.
Yeah, this really happens. And I was the person they were giving the job to. She had a temporary, like 4-month opportunity with an organization.
That she got through
She
networking.
got through networking. And then
Well, when they brought her in, they said,
Then-
look, we're bringing you in for 4 months because it takes us 4 months to get approval to do a job posting. And then we're going to do the job posting, but we're just going to give you the job. We just have to look like we're being fair.
Yeah.
So it was really great. She actually came on one of our graduate
Yeah.
calls to tell everybody it's true.
It's true.
Um, So even when jobs are posted, that's the 1 in 4 rule. That does not mean there's an opportunity there.
And this is where networking is so great, because if there's a job posting and you connect with someone who's working
Yeah.
for that company or that organization, you can ask them,
Right.
is this a real thing? Like, can you do a little bit of legwork and
Yeah.
find out, am I really applying for something? And if it is, would you mind putting my resume?
That's
in front of
right.
that person?
And if you think of this, so the hidden jobs are all the jobs that aren't posted, right? You've got all the reasons that a posted job won't even be filled, but then even of the ones that are posted, there's another half that are never posted before they're filled. So it's the example that you gave of Asta, where, there might be a posting, but it's kind of a fake. But there's also a whole host of others where the right person just shows up in that moment when the opportunity exists. So if you think about it just from a family perspective, you need, let's say you've never had a housekeeper. You need someone to come and clean your house twice a month. You've known that for a year before you ever go looking or post an ad, right? If someone in that year of you tripping over your kids' toys and, seeing piles of laundry and knowing you need help, if sometime during that year, that person just presents herself, you're gonna give her the job. You don't have to go through the rigmarole of writing an ad or looking through tons of websites or looking through people's offerings and trying to check references. This person presents herself, you ask for her reference, and you're done. It's the same idea.
Or himself.
Yeah, or himself. Right. If I am working in an organization and I'm leading a team and I'm down a couple of people, I know I need to replace those people, but I'm too busy working to pick up the slack to take the time. It takes months, just like Asta said, for the job posting to come through. The idea of this strategic networking is to insert yourself in the process so that you can actually do what Asta did and get in front of the job description, for the job posting. And in many cases, as I said earlier, they may have to post it anyway.
Yeah.
But Asta already had the job.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have a network and you need to use it. So let's just talk about what that network is made up of. Friends and family. We talked about the summertime is a great time where you're connecting probably with friends, family, you're visiting new places. Maybe there's people that you haven't seen in years.
Everybody's in a good mood
Yes,
because they're on vacation.
yes. So really thinking about that, this could be someone that's at the bus stop, somebody I will tell you who are excellent connectors, and it comes up almost every single cohort of students that we have, hairdressers. Your hairdresser knows so many people. So just talking to them as you're sitting in the chair,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about returning to work. This is what I'm thinking about doing. And you will see a brainstorm happens, and next thing you know, you're going to have multiple follow-up networking calls. Just try it. Acquaintances, neighbors, friends, parents. Think about your adult children. Your adult children are a great network. They are connected. They are out there as young professionals, working at all different companies, corporations, organizations. They are an excellent network, and don't be shy in tapping into that one. Fellow alum, going back to your alma mater, and
That's a very,
yeah.
we've had a lot of
Yes.
success there because people tend to be loyal to their fellow alums and just tapping into them, looking at where they work, looking at geography and location and role. I mean, a geography and organization and role can be really powerful.
Yeah.
I want to say one more thing. Very often they think about, what was her name? Krista Desmond?
Oh yeah.
Graduated about a year or two ago. Her husband has like 10 kids. And she knew she wanted to get into a customer success role, and she'd been a teacher. So she really worked on taking some other roles, doing some volunteer work in her community. She was a military spouse, and recrafting her resume to really focus on like client service. And it was December. She'd been working on this in September.
Yeah.
And it was the holidays. And she said, I was sitting at the dinner table and she'd been networking all over the place. Her sister-in-law, who's at the Christmas dinner table, works in customer success for Salesforce.
Right.
And she had never, so sometimes we just don't even tap into the people close to us.
Right.
Sometimes that's the low hanging
You
fruit.
you just overlook it. So don't, and really talk to everyone about, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm working on. Have that conversation, just be a part of your narrative now. And that's going to help you build and grow that network. Do you want to talk about
Yeah, I
Connect,
do.
Message, Meet?
So the idea of Connect, Message, Meet is when you're networking on LinkedIn, which is if you don't have a LinkedIn, you should have one. If you're not interested in taking our fall full course, we have a short course on LinkedIn. You have to have a LinkedIn. It's an absolute non-negotiable. But you want to have it also because it's a great place to network. If you find someone at your university who's working in your dream role at your dream company, and maybe you even have some connections in common, you want to get an opportunity to talk to them. The best way to do that first is just to get them in your network. Just send as a basic low commitment network request, a connection request on LinkedIn. Then when they accept it, ask to meet with them. You'd be surprised. It would probably bat 50-50 with people agreeing, sure, I'll give you 10 minutes on the phone to tell you about what I do. People love talking about themselves. So just consider using LinkedIn as a way first to build your network, but second, as a way to use that network strategically to get information as you're kind of either exploring and assessing opportunities, or as Kelley mentioned earlier, you see a job posting that really interests you, but your chances of getting through that ATS are so slim. This person could potentially tip off the hiring manager, maybe even get a finder's fee, which are pretty common these days. All right.
Do you have any tips for, like, if you're just not somebody who likes to approach people and talk about themselves, do you have any tips for getting over that? Because Anne had a question about her network is very small and she doesn't approach people about her work to strangers. Like, it doesn't sit well with her.
Well, we really don't advocate networking with strangers. We advocate networking with people first, kind of, if you think of just kind of concentric circles, the people closest to you. And even in many cases, a third level connection can be very powerful. The beauty of LinkedIn, especially for people who are introverted, is that it is not knocking on doors or picking up the phone.
Right.
It's very easy and very common. So someone who might be uncomfortable.
It's expected on that platform.
Yeah, that's the whole purpose of it. So that it will never feel burdensome or inappropriate.
Right.
And you can somewhat hide a little bit.
Yeah.
You will get more benefit if you can take it the next step beyond, great, I'm applying for a job here. Would you feel comfortable just, checking my resume and making a recommendation? I mean, that's all you really feel ready to do. It's at the start, that's fine. But as you build your confidence, making that personal connection, even if it's by phone, is so much more powerful.
And I want to say this because I actually think this is a really good question that we actually get from a lot of our students. We see this happen later on in the course when we get to this point. You are not telling these people everything about you. You are not telling these people about the hardships that you've had to overcome or the challenges and the uphill battle it's been for you to get where you are now, or why it is that you're maybe have a financial imperative right now and that's why you have to go back to work. You are not talking to these people about that stuff, and here is why: they've not earned the right. You are talking to them on that higher level to help you bridge a gap between where you are now and this goal that you have for yourself. And that's why earlier on in the webinar, we talked about really practicing that compelling story. And what do I feel? Asking yourself this question: what do I feel comfortable in sharing? What I want to highlight my strengths. How can I highlight those strengths? So you are not telling these people all of the things that you have either had to overcome or gone through. And we see this all the time with our students. They feel like they have to explain.
We do a number of sessions, Kelley does, just on mindsets, on overcoming negative mindsets, building positive mindsets. But I think the short answer is you kind of have to overcome it. And you have to understand that your job in a job search is to pitch yourself.
Yes.
You can find an authentic way to do it.
Yes.
But it's expected of you. I'm expecting you to tell me why you're so great and why I should hire you.
Yes.
And that's something you just have to really work on.
And it takes time to warm up to that. And
Mhm.
so that's why that practice is really
Yeah.
important. Finding somebody that you do feel safe and comfortable with and just sharing that. We have YouTubes on elevator pitches and
Yeah,
everything
we do.
too. So that's a great place if you want to go and check that out, Anne. But really, I want to really send home to all of you, you are not sharing the depths of your soul with these people. You are
Mhm.
sharing a very high level version
Of all the good stuff.
all the good stuff. And what makes you, like a good person to get behind and gives you credibility to take on this particular role. It does feel uncomfortable to talk about yourself if you haven't done it recently or you've never done it in your life. We get that.
Mhm.
And that's where Susan's saying you got to push through that discomfort.
Having some scripts.
Mhm.
We're big believers in scripts, sticky notes all over your screen.
Yes.
So that you can get used to speaking about yourself, maybe asking questions that feel uncomfortable being asked. But really, if you pursue this with a deep understanding that everybody expects it
Yeah.
and everybody's doing it, it should take some of the heat off.
And I always find with our students, if you put this perspective in your mind, you are just teaching people who you are. That's all. Sometimes feeling like the pitch, if I'm pitching myself, that feels salesy and that feels a little bit real, out of our comfort level, then you are just teaching people who you are. That's what you're doing. You're doing a little education on who Anne is in the world.
And if you start, Anne, with the people that are safe, like Kelley said,
yeah,
that's how you'll build the confidence. It'll start becoming second nature to you. But thanks for asking that question. Okay.
All right. Well, speaking of mindsets and those mindsets of those that are around you, we actually spent a fair amount of time on this earlier in the program, but your mindset really is everything. And what energy you bring to this job search, the way that you're talking to yourself as you are meeting challenges and you are having to be resilient is everything. It includes how you're taking care of yourself. So if you think that you're going to get, 2 interviews in and then be ghosted by someone or send out a bunch of networking things and maybe only hear back from one person and you're feeling kind of downtrodden about the whole entire job search process, if you think that then going and doing everything that's so demanding in your life and so taxing and overwhelming is going to be sustainable, it's not. It is absolutely not. You have to take really good care of yourself when you are doing this process. And that includes the basics. How are you eating? How are you sleeping? Are you getting enough exercise? Are you getting fresh air? Are you breathing?
Are you hydrated?
Yeah, like it's the basic things. It's who am I putting around me? Maybe that phone call of that friend who starts your day off with 900 negative, laundry list of negative things. You have to put a boundary around that right now because you have this bigger goal for yourself and you can't feel depleted by those things right now because you are trying to sustain getting yourself this work. So just being very mindful of what energy am I bringing? What energy am I letting in? And how am I maintaining my energy through this process? That's really your job. That's really your job.
And then the second piece of it is, what are you saying to yourself? And these are the 4 things that we hear
all the time.
All the time. I wasn't paid, so it doesn't count. That's a myth. We've already talked about that. It does. I worked at my family company, so it doesn't count. Do you think that your brother-in-law, who's a CFO, is saying that? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So it does count, right?
Yep. Caregiving work never counts, right? That was just something I did. That was time I took off,
And there are elements of it that do. The advocacy work, the volunteer work, all of that counts. And unpaid advocacy work doesn't count. It does. It absolutely does. And really where it counts within the context of a networking call or an interview is educating that person on what you've done for a community and and reminding that person that the community is run by people like us. We all know it because we've all done it. Yes. Okay. So we talked about this, speaking kindly to yourself. We've covered all this.
Yeah, we covered all. Yeah.
We're getting ahead of ourselves today.
Yeah, we covered.
Okay. So another little mindset thing that help. Career breaks are ubiquitous in the US workforce. In fact, I'm just in the process of having the last chapter of my book edited, and roughly 50% of women will take a career break of at least 2 years. That's a complete break of work. 50% along their career. Of the remaining 50%, 77% will stall their careers. That means that they will either not take a job because they want to kind of stay where it's comfortable while their kids are young, maybe not even apply for a job
Right.
and earn promotion, because or not take that assignment overseas that they know they need to take because they don't want to move their family. So that's a stall. And then there's a deceleration where I'm going to take a smaller book of business, or I'm going to work part-time, or I'm going to do a job share. That's the other 23% of the remaining 50%. So you put those numbers together and it's 88.5% of women are taking some form of career pause. You are not that unique. It's the vast majority. And this is just professional women. We're not talking about blue collar workers here. So you're in very good company. The time that you take off, as I said in the last slide, benefits everyone, including the person that's interviewing you. So there is a guarantee that the person interviewing you has benefited from somebody who's taken a career break running something in their town. There's also a really good chance, given the numbers, that that person interviewing you has a wife, a sister, a friend who's taken a career break, and a very good chance, if they're female, that they will take them themselves. So knowing that should just give you a little bit more confidence. A good interviewer, I'm not going to say a good interview because I think it's a bad tactic, but very often what an interview will do is just make you uncomfortable to see how you respond. Don't let them make you feel uncomfortable about your career break because they are ubiquitous. Okay. Great. That is it.
That is it. Yes.
So a couple of announcements. I mean, Kelley mentioned that we have, I think you mentioned that we have a career relaunch course. It's a 10-week course. Our fall session begins on September 20th or something like that. But we are doing an information session where potential students, prospective students can join and just learn about it and ask us questions. We'll have a couple of graduates, I think 3, on that call to share their experiences. Highly recommend signing up for that if you have any interest in learning that. But in between this 1-hour webinar and the 10-week high touch course, we have, as Kelley mentioned, a YouTube channel, new content every week. We have some small, specific targeted courses that are available right online. We've done some LinkedIn learning.
Yeah.
We have an active LinkedIn page. So please use our resources.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And Megan will follow up. Megan, do you want to kind of take over from here? Do we have any questions? Any other
Yeah.
lingering questions?
Well, if anybody has any last questions, we are about to wrap up. I know we're about at our hour time
Oh,
slot.
wow.
But yeah, we do have the spot courses available. We do have the career relaunch course, which is the flagship 10-week cohort program. So it's a live and hybrid course. So there's a whole learning platform of self-paced videos, but you do them week to week with a cohort of other career relaunchers. So you're not on that journey alone.
And we keep it to 10 to 12. So once we get to that, we open
yes,
another.
they're small groups. So
Yeah.
you really get the benefit, the synergy of the group. And, you know, a lot of this job searching process is really lonely. And you feel that's why you're struggling, is you feel like you're in it all by yourself, and having the energy and the structure and accountability of having a group and some good deadlines really accelerates your progress. So I invite you to attend the info session in 2 weeks. It's going to be August 27th at the same time. And you can watch the recording if that time doesn't work for you. But yeah, the course starts September 20th with an onboarding, and we run week 1, September 23rd. It finishes up before the holidays. We wrap up December 6th. So, and we do take a week slowdown around Thanksgiving if that's an issue for
Maybe
you.
we'll be sending a follow-up email with
All the
Yeah.
details.
the freebies that we offered today, and then links to the other resources.
Yeah.
Okay. Eva, thank you for turning your camera
Yeah,
on.
did you have a question, Eva?
Yes, hi, thank you so much for your time. I think everybody's camera shy, so it's not that we didn't like what you were saying. I think that, you know, it takes a little bit for the people to be on the camera. But I wanted to give you very good pieces of news. I received information from a former graduate, Linda Hamel, and actually she graduated from your program.
Yeah, we know her well. She just got promoted.
So she just got promoted from analyst about 2 years ago to all the way to director. So
Director, yeah.
Twice. And one of the things that I wanted to ask, maybe I didn't do it well, I fill in the application with the message of you hear from us. So does it mean that not everybody is qualified to attend the program? You go through the application. If we are interested in the program, should I have heard from you already, or you will communicate with the people later on?
Yes.
So the first thing to do really is to come to the information session, because then you'll really learn about the program. The applications are, it's an online application. What we're really looking for is to make sure that people could really benefit from what we need, are coming for something that we can provide. So for example, if somebody writes in their application, I just want someone to edit my LinkedIn page, we're not going to bring them into the course because they're going to be not getting value.
Right.
However, if we look at their LinkedIn page and see that it really isn't even close
Mhm.
to done, and they don't have a clear lane, and they don't really have any explanation of their gap, we might, or Megan might write back to them and say, you know what, we really think you'd be a good candidate for this course. And we might invite them in. If there's ever a question, like that might be a questionable one, we might meet with the candidate. Most candidates who apply are accepted. We're not looking to turn people away. If we turn someone away, it's only because we can't give them what they need.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
And-
think that I
and-
haven't heard from you yet, I believe.
Yeah. Well, and the app, there are, we've had applications come in, Megan. Was
Was
Eva
Eva
one
one
of
of them?
them?
Yes, Eva, we just got your application this last week. Yes.
So we
Good.
haven't
Okay.
reviewed them yet.
Yeah, we haven't reviewed them
Yeah.
yet. Yeah, no, we haven't reviewed
I was
them.
like, I
Yeah.
thought that I had submitted the application, but I said,
Yeah.
I can.
Early
So I
early
said I wanted to-
September. Yes, early September. So after we do the info session, we open up widely open up and broadcast that our applications are open. You're just ahead of the curve. You're ahead of the game, which is great. And we
But you know what,
totally
Eva,
appreciate it. Yeah.
we can go ahead and just look at yours early, okay? Just because, we don't want you like sitting here wondering. So we will take a look at it this week and get back to you, okay?
Thank
Thanks.
you.
And thank Linda for us and give her our best.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, well, everyone else, thank you so much for joining us. Please connect with us any way
Yes.
that suits you. And we hope to see you on August 27th, just to learn more about our program. And often people will join knowing that they can't come in the fall. We offer it again in January. We offer it again in April. It's offered 3 times a year. So look forward to seeing some of you there. Thank
Take
you.
care,
Best of
everyone.
luck.
Bye.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending.